the U-boat crews who realized they were already dead. In May 1943, during the Battle of the Atlantic, German U-boat crews began to realize the tide had turned. Allied advances such as centimeter-wave radar, Leigh Lights, Hedgehog depth charges, and long-range patrol aircraft shattered the U-boat safe zones. Losses became so severe that Admiral Karl Dönitz was forced to withdraw his submarines from the North Atlantic. May 5, 1943. North Atlantic. Grid Square AM, 31. The sea is calm in the way that feels wrong to men who live inside it. Inside U-305, Captain Lieutenant Ernst Bauer stands beneath the periscope well, boots planted wide as the submarine rides just below the surface. Condensation drips steadily from the overhead pipes. The air is thick with diesel fumes, sweat, and unwashed wool. Somewhere aft, a sailor coughs and tries to suppress it. No one speaks above a whisper. They are charging batteries. They have to. For 3 hours the boat has run submerged, electric motors whining softly, needles on the gauges creeping toward red. If they stay down much longer, they will be blind, deaf, and dead in the water. Bauer knows the math. Every commander does. Surfacing is dangerous, but not surfacing is suicide. Surface, Bauer says quietly. The ballast vents hiss. The deck tilts. With a shudder, U-305 breaks through the Atlantic skin, conning tower rising into moonlight. The watch climbs out, binoculars already sweeping the horizon. To the naked eye, the ocean looks empty, endless, safe. That illusion lasts less than 30 seconds. Aircraft, someone shouts. A white beam snaps on out of nowhere, blinding, unnatural, cutting straight through darkness and rain haze. It locks onto the U-boat like a finger of God. The Leigh Light. Before Bauer can even shout the order to dive, explosions rip into the sea around them. The submarine lurches violently. Men are thrown against steel. Somewhere forward, a valve screams as it ruptures. Depth charges. U-305 plunges, ballast flooding in chaos. The deck slamming nose down. The lights flicker, then hold. The hull creaks as pressure begins to climb. Inside the boat, Bauer already knows the truth. They have been seen. Not by chance. Not by luck. By a system. For 4 years, German U-boats ruled the Atlantic night. They surfaced freely, hunted convoys by moonlight, attacked with impunity, and vanished beneath the waves before escorts could react. The ocean itself seemed to protect them. Vast, dark, unknowable. But in the spring of 1943, something has changed. Now aircraft appear without warning. Destroyers arrive with terrifying precision. Depth charges fall not in random patterns, but exactly where the boat will be. Even when U-boats escape, they are hunted again within hours, sometimes minutes. The sea is no longer empty. It is watched. U-305 shudders as another string of explosions detonates above them. The hull rings like a bell. Light bulbs burst. One man screams as scalding water sprays from a ruptured pipe. The boat drops deeper 150 meters, then 170. Bauer grips the edge of the chart table, knuckles white. They were careful. They followed doctrine. They avoided radio transmissions. They surfaced only when necessary. None of it mattered. Above them, Allied aircraft circle calmly, radar screens glowing green in their bellies. Escorts converge with sonar already locked in. This is not a search. This is an execution. Elsewhere in the Atlantic, other U-boat commanders are reaching the same conclusion. On U-221, a veteran crew is destroyed in a single afternoon, caught repeatedly by aircraft that seem to know exactly where to look. On U-954, survivors later describe escort ships turning toward them before sonar contact should have been possible. On U-638, the captain sends a final message. Enemy tactics overwhelming. Losses unsustainable. Messages like that are piling up on Admiral Dönitz's desk. For the first time since the war began, U-boat commanders are not asking how to attack. They are asking whether it is still possible to survive. Inside U-305, the hydrophone operator whispers, "Screws, multiple. Closing." Bauer closes his eyes for a brief second. He understands now. The Atlantic has not become more dangerous because of courage or numbers. It has become dangerous because the enemy can see. And once seen, a U-boat has nowhere to go. The pressure gauge climbs steadily. 200 meters. The hull groans in protest. A deep, animal sound that every submariner recognizes. It is not the noise of imminent failure, not yet, but it is a reminder. Steel can only bend so far before it stops bending at all. Captain Lieutenant Bauer forces his breathing to slow. Panic wastes oxygen. Panic spreads. A U-boat dies from panic long before it floods. Silent running, he orders. The engines fall quiet. Pumps are shut down. Men freeze in place, muscles burning from the effort of not moving. Even a dropped wrench could echo through the hull and betray them. The only sounds now are the creak of pressure and the faint hiss of air systems struggling to keep up. The hydrophone operator tilts his head, eyes closed, listening to the sea as if it were alive. "They're circling," he whispers. "Destroyers. At least 2. Maybe 3. Bauer nods once. This 2 is new. Earlier in the war, escorts would lose contact as soon as a U-boat dove deep enough. Sonar was crude, unreliable. Depth charges were dropped in hopeful patterns, exploding blindly in the dark. A skilled commander could slip away, change course, wait. In 1943, that world no longer exists. Above U-305, Allied ships are not guessing. They are tracking. Astic pings echo down through the water, sharp and metallic, bouncing off the submarine's hull and returning precise distance and bearing. The sound pulses through the boat like a heartbeat. Ping, ping, ping. Each one is closer. Bauer remembers his first patrol years ago. The Atlantic had felt endless then, an ally as much as a battlefield. There were safe zones where aircraft could not reach, where escorts were few, where a U-boat could surface in daylight and feel almost untouchable. Those zones are gone. Long-range patrol aircraft now cross the Atlantic like birds of prey. American B-24 Liberators and British Sunderland flying boats fill the air gaps that once protected the submarines. Radar sees through darkness and fog. Leigh Lights rip the night open at the moment of attack. The ocean has been mapped, measured, and weaponized. A dull thump reverberates through the hull. Another pattern of depth charges, closer this time. The lights flicker again. A gauge shatters, spraying glass across the control room. A sailor bites down hard to keep from crying out. Bauer glances at the damage reports being whispered to him. Minor flooding forward. Electrical failure in one compartment. Nothing fatal yet. But he knows the pattern as well as the enemy does. The escorts will not rush. They will tighten the noose, forcing the boat deeper, draining batteries, exhausting the crew. Eventually something will give, a valve, a motor, a man. Somewhere else in the Atlantic, Captain Lieutenant Heinrich Lehmann aboard U-600 reaches the same conclusion under similar circumstances. His boat is attacked 3 times in one night, each time by different aircraft, each strike more accurate than the last. He later writes in his diary, found after the war, and GT, "We are no longer hunters. We are being herded." Radio traffic confirms it. Boats that transmit are attacked within hours. Boats that remain silent are still found. Convoys reroute faster than they should. Escorts appear at interception points that feel preordained. For the men inside the boats, the realization creeps in slowly, like cold. This is not bad luck. This is dominance. Inside U-305, the pinging pauses. For a brief, terrifying moment, Bauer wonders if they've lost contact. If the escorts have repositioned for the kill. Then it resumes, closer, more confident. A voice from aft. Battery at 60%. Bauer swallows. 60% is not enough to outlast a determined hunt. He imagines the men above him. Allied officers standing calmly on destroyer bridges. Sonar operators adjusting dials. Aircraft circling overhead with fuel to spare. They are not afraid. They are not rushed. They know time is on their side. For the first time since the U-boat war began, German commanders understand something that had been unthinkable just months earlier. The ocean no longer belongs to them. It belongs to the enemy. and every minute spent alive beneath it is borrowed time. The next attack comes without warning. There is no build-up, no cautious probing. The depth charges detonate almost directly overhead, a violent hammering that throws men off their feet and slams Bauer into the bulkhead. The lights go out completely this time, plunging the control room into darkness broken only by red emergency lamps flickering to life. Pipe bursts forward. Seawater sprays across the deck, icy and relentless. Damage control. Bauer shoots. Men scramble, hands moving from memory rather than sight. Wooden wedges are driven into ruptured fittings. Rags are stuffed into seams. Someone begins pumping manually, muscles screaming with effort. The boat steadies, but the list is worse now, the bow heavy. The hydrophone operator looks up, pale. "They're changing tactics," he whispers. "Shorter patterns. They know our depth." That, more than the explosions, freezes the room. Knowing a U-boat's approximate position is one thing. Knowing its depth is something else entirely. For years, German submariners believed the sea itself hid them once they slipped below the surface. Sound bent. Currents masked movement. Sonar was imprecise, dependent on conditions. A skilled commander could exploit that uncertainty. But now the Allies are no longer guessing. Improved sonar sets, tuned, refined, used by trained crews working in teams, are turning the water into a transparent medium. The U-boat's steel hull reflects sound cleanly. Its movements write signatures in the sea. And the escorts are learning quickly. Above U-305, a British destroyer commander watches his plot update in real time. He does not imagine where the submarine might be. He sees where it is. He adjusts course and speed, guiding his ship as calmly as if docking in harbor. The next attack comes from ahead, not above. Explosions ripple along the bow, closer than any before. The pressure wave buckles internal supports. A motor cuts out with a shriek of tortured metal. The boat plunges another 10 meters before Bauer orders ballast blown to arrest the descent. "Depth?" he demands. 230 meters, comes the answer. "Hull tolerances." "We're close, Herr Kelun." Close is an understatement. U-305 was not designed to live here. Every additional meter increases the strain exponentially. Rivets creak. Seams weep. The steel itself complains. Bauer knows what the escorts are doing. They are forcing him deeper, not because they expect the hull to collapse, but because they want him slow, predictable, desperate. This is systematic. Elsewhere, similar scenes are playing out across the Atlantic. In mid-May, U-boat after U-boat is detected, attacked, and destroyed with horrifying efficiency. Entire patrol lines vanish. Boats that once averaged weeks at sea now last days or hours. Crews begin returning to base hollow-eyed, speaking of aircraft that appeared out of cloud with lights blazing, of escorts that never lost contact, of weapons that exploded forward of the ship rather than behind it, Hedgehog mortars firing dozens of contact-fuse bombs that detonate only on impact. No explosion means a miss. An explosion means a kill. There is no warning splash. No counting seconds. No chance to evade. Inside U-305, Bauer feels the realization settle fully for the first time. The enemy does not need luck anymore. Technology has closed the gap between detection and destruction. Radar finds the boat on the surface. Leigh Lights remove darkness. Sonar tracks it below. Hedgehogs kill it without guesswork. Long-range aircraft ensure there is no safe water left. The entire Atlantic has become a net. A sailor near the forward compartments begins to sob quietly. No one tells him to stop. Everyone understands. Bauer checks the battery again. 50%. Too low to outrun them underwater. Too high to justify surfacing into certain death. There is no good choice left. For the first time in the war, U-boat commanders are no longer calculating how to attack convoys. They are calculating how long it will take before they are found again. And whether anything they do can change the outcome. The pings stop, not fades stop. Inside U-305, the sudden silence is more terrifying than the explosions. Men hold their breath, listening for something, anything that explains it. Bauer knows better. Silence does not mean the enemy is gone. It means they have repositioned. They're ahead of us now, the hydrophone operator whispers. Waiting.
Bauer nods slowly.
He has reached the same conclusion. The escorts have learned his habits, his likely course changes, his depth preferences. They are no longer reacting. They are anticipating. This is the moment, the one every submariner fears but rarely admits exists. The moment when survival calculations collapse into certainty. When experience, training, and courage all point to the same answer. They are already dead. Another pattern detonates. Precise, tight, devastating. The forward compartments shudder violently. A bulkhead flexes in a way it never should. The lights flicker again, then hold, but the boat has taken a permanent downward angle now. Flooding increasing forward, comes the report. We can hold for now. Bauer closes his eyes briefly, then opens them. He has been a U-boat commander long enough to recognize the truth behind those words. For now is not long. Across the Atlantic, other commanders are reaching this same realization almost simultaneously. On U-954, the captain records in his war diary, *, enemy forces appear everywhere at once. It is no longer possible to evade. * on U-640, the crew is destroyed after 8 separate attacks in 12 hours. Never allowed to rest, never allowed to escape. The pattern is unmistakable. The Allies have learned how to keep contact indefinitely. Relief forces rotate in. Aircraft hand off to ships. Ships guide aircraft back onto targets. No gap remains long enough for a U-boat to breathe, recharge, or hide. For years, German submariners believed that skill and nerve could overcome technology. That the ocean's size would always favor the hunter willing to take risks. In May 1943, that belief dies. Inside U-305, Bauer gathers his senior crew. He keeps his voice level, professional. Panic helps no one now. We will attempt a course change, he says. Slowly. 10 degrees. Maintain depth. They comply without question. But the men's faces tell the real story. They are no longer thinking about home, or medals, or victories. They are thinking about pressure hulls and oxygen levels and how long it takes to drown. The pings resume almost immediately. The escorts did not lose them. They waited for the move. Another Hedgehog salvo erupts, this time forward and slightly to port. One explosion is closer than all the others. The hull rings with a sharp, metallic crack that echoes through the boat like a gunshot. Silence follows. Not the enemy's silence. Internal silence. A senior petty officer looks at Bauer, eyes wide. Hull breach forward, he says quietly. Minor, but spreading. Bauer nods once. This is the point of no return. In the early years of the war, U-boat commanders spoke of running the gauntlet when crossing heavily defended waters. It was dangerous but temporary. Once through, the ocean opened again. Now there is no gauntlet. There is only the ocean, and it is hostile everywhere. Bauer thinks of Admiral Dönitz, of the orders that sent them here, of the promises that the U-boat arm would starve Britain into submission. He wonders, briefly, if anyone above truly understands what is happening beneath the waves. Then the thought passes. Another explosion detonates almost directly above the conning tower. The boat lurches hard. Men are thrown to the deck. The forward lights go out permanently. Water rushes in faster now. Bauer steadies himself against the chart table, his expression unreadable. He does not shout. He does not curse. There is nothing left to say. The realization has already settled into every man aboard. They are no longer fighting the enemy. They are waiting for the ocean to finish the job. The forward compartments are gone. Not destroyed in a single merciful instant, but lost slowly, relentlessly, as water forces its way through seams never meant to fail. The bow dips another degree, then another. Men move ankle-deep in icy seawater, their faces tight with concentration, not fear. Fear has already burned itself out. Captain Lieutenant Bauer watches the depth gauge slide past 240 meters. This depth was once theoretical. A number printed in manuals with warnings beside it. A place no one expected to visit, let alone stay. Now it is home. Blow forward ballast, he orders. Compressed air roars through the pipes. The boat shudders as water is forced out, fighting gravity and pressure. For a moment, just a moment, the descent slows. Above them, the escorts wait. They do not rush in for the kill. They do not panic. They know exactly how much air a German submarine carries. They know exactly how long batteries last at this depth. They know that every corrective action Bauer takes leaves a signature: noise, movement, change. The ocean has become a ledger, and U-305 is writing its final entries line by line. Another Hedgehog attack slams down. This time there is no doubt. A detonation blooms directly against the pressure hull. Steel deforms with a sound like tearing fabric amplified 1,000 times. A jet of water punches through the bulkhead, killing 2 men instantly, snuffing them out as if they were candles. The lights die. Emergency lamps flicker, then stabilize, casting the control room in dim red shadow. Faces appear carved from stone. No one screams. Bauer looks at the men around him, young, old, veterans and replacements alike, and understands that leadership has narrowed to one final responsibility: dignity. Elsewhere in the Atlantic, May 1943 unfolds with the same merciless rhythm. In the space of weeks, 43 U-boats are destroyed. Not scattered losses, not unlucky encounters. Systematic annihilation. Convoys are no longer easy prey. Escort carriers roam the ocean with aircraft that never need to leave. Radar picks up snorkels, periscopes, even surfaced boats in heavy seas. Leigh Lights tear the night open. Hedgehogs remove the need for guessing. Sonar crews talk their commanders onto targets like air traffic controllers. U-boat commanders transmit desperate messages before being silenced. Enemy superiority overwhelming. Continuous contact, no evasion possible. Losses unacceptable. Admiral Karl Dönitz reads every report. He knows his captains are not cowards. He knows they are not suddenly incompetent. These are the same men who terrorized the Atlantic for years, who came within weeks of starving Britain into surrender. But the environment has changed. The ocean has been conquered. On May 24th, Dönitz issues the order he has resisted for months. The U-boats are to withdraw from the North Atlantic. It is an admission of defeat, not of courage but of mathematics. The cost of continuing is no longer measured in ships lost or tonnage sunk, but in certainty. Boats are not merely at risk. They are doomed. Inside U-305, the order will never arrive. The radio has been silent for hours. Water climbs past the knees now. The boat is heavy, sluggish, wounded beyond saving. Bauer looks once more at the depth gauge, then at the men waiting for him. He does not order abandon ship. There is nowhere to go. The ocean presses in from all sides, patient, unstoppable. Steel begins to fail in cascading pops and groans. A final, massive rupture tears through the hull. For a fraction of a second, the Atlantic rushes in. Then there is nothing. No wreckage breaks the surface. No oil slick. No survivors. U-305 disappears into the dark. One more mark on a chart that is rapidly filling with crosses. Above, the escorts log the kill calmly, professionally, and move on. There are other contacts waiting. May 1943 does not end with silence. It ends with absence. Across the Atlantic, radio rooms that once crackled constantly with encrypted traffic from wolf packs begin to fall quiet. Patrol lines that should be reporting positions, contacts, and attacks instead return nothing at all. Boats that left port weeks earlier simply vanish from the operational picture, erased without final messages, without witnesses. At Carnival, Admiral Karl Dönitz studies the situation map in grim silence. Red pins, boats lost, now outnumber the blue pins still at sea. The pattern is no longer deniable. Every convoy engagement costs submarines faster than they can be replaced. Every patrol ends the same way. Detection, pursuit, destruction. This is not attrition. It is extermination. Dönitz has built his career and his faith on the U-boat arm. He understands submarine warfare better than any man alive. And because of that, he understands something his superiors do not want to hear. There is no tactical adjustment left to make. Wolf packs fail because radios betray them. Lone patrols fail because aircraft find them anyway. Staying submerged fails because batteries run out. Surfacing fails because radar sees through darkness and weather alike. Running deeper fails because sonar follows and pressure wins. Every option ends the same way. On May 24, 1943, Dönitz sends the order. Short, precise, unmistakable. U-boats are to withdraw from the North Atlantic. They will regroup, re-equip, await new technologies that might restore balance. The phrasing is careful, but the meaning is absolute. The battle has been lost. At sea, the few boats still alive receive the message with mixed emotions. Relief first, sharp and almost painful, then shame, and finally understanding. They have not failed. They have been overtaken. Captain Lieutenant Otto Kretschmer, once the most successful U-boat ace of the war before his capture, will later describe this period in a single sentence. The enemy learned faster than we could adapt. For the men still trapped inside steel hulls beneath the Atlantic, that knowledge comes too late. Some boats never receive the withdrawal order at all. They are found and destroyed before it can reach them. Others limp home, damaged, exhausted, their crews hollow-eyed and quiet. There are no celebrations on the docks when they return. No vans, no speeches, only lists of names. Families wait for men who will never come back, clutching letters written weeks earlier, filled with confidence that now feels cruel in hindsight. Official notices arrive slowly, carefully worded, offering honor where explanation would hurt too much. In Allied headquarters, the mood is different but not triumphant. Commanders recognize what has happened. They have not merely beaten the U-boats. They have rendered them obsolete. A weapon that once threatened the survival of Britain itself has been neutralized by a network of technology, coordination, and patience. The ocean has been closed. For the first time since 1939, Allied shipping moves with something like confidence. Losses continue, but they are manageable.
Convoi arrive.
Supplies build. The machinery of invasion begins to turn. May 1943 marks the true turning point of the Battle of the Atlantic. Not because submarines stop sinking ships, but because the men inside them understand something fundamental. They are no longer feared, and fear, more than torpedoes, was the U-boat's greatest weapon. June 1943.
L'Orient, occupied France.
The harbor smells wrong. Oil, rust, sewage, and something older. Something that lingers when too many boats leave and not enough return. Concrete pens loom over the docks like tombs, their walls blackened by exhaust and Atlantic salt. Inside them, a handful of U-boats sit moored in silence, hulls scarred, paint flaking, decks empty. When U-266 slides into its berth, there is no cheering. The crew climbs out slowly, stiff from weeks submerged, faces gray with fatigue. Their uniforms hang loose on bodies that have lost weight. Eyes dart instinctively at every sound. Sirens, aircraft engines, even gulls crying overhead. Captain Lieutenant Friedrich Keller pauses at the top of the conning tower ladder and looks back at his boat. She is alive. Barely. The forward casing is dented. Pressure hull plating rippled from depth charge shock. One electric motor failed 3 days earlier. Another attack like the ones in May would have finished them. They all know it. A dock officer meets them, clipboard in hand, expression formal. He checks names, nods, writes. There are fewer men than there should be. No one asks what happened. Everyone already knows. In barracks nearby, returning crews sit on bunks in silence or smoke until their hands shake. Conversations, when they happen, circle the same thoughts. They never lost us. They always knew. There was nowhere left to hide. Men who once bragged about tonnage now struggle to sleep. Nightmares come easily. Of pressure gauges climbing, of lights dying, of steel screaming inward. Some wake convinced they are still submerged, clawing at blankets as if they were bulkheads. The myth of the U-boat ace collapses here. These men are not cowards. They did not lose nerve. They were simply outmatched by a system that removed chance from the equation. Commanders file patrol reports that read more like confessions than tactical analyses. Words repeat across different boats, different captains, different oceans. Continuous contact. Enemy aircraft omnipresent. No opportunity to recharge batteries. Depth charges precise and relentless. Some officers soften the language, hoping not to sound defeatist. Others do not bother. One report ends with a single line. Asterisk survival depended on luck alone. Asterisk. That sentence terrifies the command staff more than any loss figure. Luck is not a doctrine. In mess halls that once rang with stories of successful attacks, laughter no longer comes easily. New crews listen quietly as veterans speak. Not boasting, but warning. They talk about how fast things change, how confidence turns into certainty of death without warning. Some men request transfers. Others volunteer anyway, believing they might do better, survive longer, die differently. The Kriegsmarine continues to train new submariners, but the tone has changed. No one promises victory anymore, only duty. Outside the pens, Allied bombers rumble overhead daily now, pounding the very bases that once symbolized U-boat invincibility. Concrete cracks, pens shake. Boats are destroyed in port, never even reaching the Atlantic. The war has come full circle. The hunters are trapped. And the men who survived May 1943 understand something those still dreaming of redemption do not. The Atlantic did not turn against them suddenly. It turned the moment the enemy learned how to see. July 1943. Mid-Atlantic convoy lanes. The sea looks the same. Gray swells roll endlessly beneath a low sky. Wind scuds spray off the wavetops. From a distance, nothing about the Atlantic suggests that anything fundamental has changed. But to the men who sail it now, above and below the surface, the difference is unmistakable. Allied convoy escorts move with a new confidence. Destroyers no longer race blindly toward sound contacts, dropping depth charges in hopeful arcs. They move deliberately, methodically, sonar operators calm and precise, voices steady as they guide ships onto targets that behave exactly as predicted. Aircraft orbit overhead in patient patterns, fueled and rotated like clockwork, handing off contacts without losing a beat. The convoy is no longer prey. It is bait. On the bridges of escort ships, officers speak openly now about zones of denial, areas where U-boats simply cannot operate for long without being detected. The language has shifted. Where once there were gaps, there are now layers. Radar to spot surfaced boats. HF/DF to trace radio transmissions. Sonar to track submerged contacts. Hedgehogs to kill without warning. The system feeds itself. A single detection draws aircraft. Aircraft force a dive. Diving slows the submarine and drains batteries. Slower movement sharpens sonar contact. Sonar contact brings ships. Ships bring weapons that explode only if they hit. There is no step where the U-boat regains control. For the few German submarines still attempting patrols outside the main Atlantic routes, the experience is different, but no less bleak. They hide in secondary waters, stalk less protected convoys, strike cautiously when opportunity presents itself. But opportunity is rare. Every attack risks exposure. Every exposure invites annihilation. A commander aboard U-371, operating in the South Atlantic, writes privately in his diary, Asterisk, the enemy reacts before we finish reacting. Asterisk, it is not a complaint. It is a statement of fact. The psychological weight of that realization is crushing. U-boat warfare was built on initiative, on choosing when to strike, when to disappear, when to surface and breathe. Without initiative, a submarine is just a coffin with engines. Admiral Dönitz knows this. He pins his hopes on future solutions. New boats with snorkels to recharge batteries while submerged, new radar detectors, new tactics that might restore surprise. But these are months, years away. And even if they arrive, they will face an enemy that is learning just as fast. For the men still training in Baltic waters, the lessons of May 1943 circulate quietly, almost like superstition. Instructors do not speak openly of defeat, but they no longer speak of dominance either. They emphasize caution, silence, survival. They do not promise success. In Allied ports, cargo flows steadily now: food, fuel, tanks, aircraft, men. The logistical miracle that makes invasion possible depends on this quiet victory beneath the waves. There are no parades for sonar operators or radar engineers. No medals for mathematicians who refine detection ranges. But their work has done what torpedoes alone never could. It has taken fear out of the Atlantic. And fear was the currency the U-boats traded in. By late summer, the realization that began inside crushed pressure hulls has spread upward through the Kriegsmarine, then outward through German command. The submarine arm will continue to fight. Boats will still sink ships. Men will still die. But the war beneath the waves will never again be a war of advantage. It will be a war of endurance, one the U-boats cannot win. August 1943.
Kiel.
The apartment smells of boiled cabbage and damp paper. Frau Bauer sits at the small kitchen table with a letter unfolded in front of her. Reading it again, though she knows every word by heart. The handwriting is neat, careful. Her husband's attempt to sound calm. * weather poor. Spirits good. Expect patrol to be difficult but manageable. Kiss the children for me. * The letter is dated May 3rd. It is the last one. Weeks have passed now. Then months. The official notice arrived in July, delivered by a uniformed officer who would not meet her eyes. The wording was exact, practiced, designed to say everything without explaining anything. * missing. Presumed lost. * No location. No time.
No grave.
For families across Germany, this becomes the new language of the war at sea. Letters stop mid-sentence. Packages are returned unopened. Official condolences arrive with medals and signatures, but without answers. The men inside the boats knew what was happening long before anyone ashore did. Inside steel hulls in May, June, and July, U-boat crews understood that survival had become statistical. That skill mattered less than timing. That timing mattered less than technology. That technology now belonged to the enemy. Those who died did so knowing there would be no dramatic last stand. No heroic surface duel.
No escape pod, no lifeboat.
Just pressure. Darkness. Water. For the men who returned, survivors' guilt takes root quickly. They attend briefings where replacement crews listen with forced attentiveness. They walk past empty bunks in barracks. They hear familiar names spoken only in past tense. Some volunteer again, believing survival is a debt that must be repaid. Others quietly request shore duty, citing exhaustion or medical issues no doctor can disprove. A few break completely, hands shaking, eyes vacant, unable to reconcile being alive with the knowledge that so many others are not. The command struggles to maintain morale without lying outright. New boats are launched with speeches about innovation. New weapons are promised. New tactics discussed. But no one mentions May directly. It hangs over everything like a shadow no one wants to name. The Atlantic has become a place where hope dies quietly. Allied sailors notice the change in subtler ways. Convoys arrive on time. Escorts stand down less often. Sonar contacts drop. When they do occur, they end quickly. The sea feels less tense, less watched, even as vigilance remains high. Somewhere beneath that calm lies the wreckage of hundreds of submarines. Silent, unseen. Their crews entombed in steel that never reached the surface again. For the men who sailed them, there is no marker to visit. No coastline to stand on and imagine where they went down. The ocean keeps its dead. By the end of 1943, the realization that began in crushed compartments and flickering red lights has spread through every level of the war. The U-boat arm is no longer the terror of the Atlantic. It is a memory recent, painful, and irreversible. September 1943. Baltic Sea Training Grounds. The water here is calmer than the Atlantic, the horizon tighter, the coast never truly out of reach. It should feel safer. For the young men climbing down ladders into new steel hulls, it does not. Lieutenant zur See Hans Miller is 22 years old. His uniform still smells faintly of the depot. He listens as an instructor explains battery management, silent running, crash dives, procedures refined over years of success and now haunted by recent failure. The tone is technical, careful, stripped of bravado. No one mentions May aloud. But every man in the compartment knows it is there. Veterans attached as instructors pause occasionally, their eyes drifting to nothing as if hearing echoes no one else can. They emphasize discipline, silence, patience. They do not promise survivability. They talk instead about reducing risk, about extending time, about making the enemy work harder. The language has shifted from confidence to mitigation. Mueller notices it immediately. During exercises, Allied aircraft are simulated constantly. Sonar contacts are assumed, not questioned. Surface time is treated as an emergency condition rather than routine. Even here, in controlled waters, the war intrudes, because the war beneath the waves has changed permanently. Out in the Atlantic, wrecks accumulate quietly. Boats lost in 1943 and 1944 will not be found for decades. Resting intact on the seabed, pressure hulls crushed inward, hatches sealed, crews frozen in the last positions they occupied. The ocean preserves what it destroys. For the Kriegsmarine, the submarine arm becomes something else after May 1943. Not a strategic weapon, but a holding action. Boats still sail. Attacks still occur. Men still die. But the expectation of decisive impact is gone. Every patrol is understood as temporary defiance. In Allied headquarters, the Battle of the Atlantic is spoken of in past tense more often now. Resources are reallocated. Escort groups rotate. Attention shifts toward preparation for invasion, for amphibious landings that require absolute control of the sea. That control has already been won. The men who died to secure it will never know their names were written into planning documents instead of headlines. Sonar operators, radar technicians, aircraft crews flying monotonous patrols over empty water. These are the quiet victors of a battle that ended not with surrender, but with disappearance. For German submariners, the knowledge is unbearable and unavoidable. They were not beaten in a single decisive clash. They were outpaced, outseen, and outlasted. Their world shrank until every action led to detection, and every detection led to death. The ocean did not turn red with blood. It simply stopped hiding them. That is the cruelty of May 1943. Not that U-boats were destroyed, but that their crews knew in those final weeks that survival no longer depended on courage or skill, only on whether the enemy looked their way. And the enemy was always looking. October 1943.
Carneval, France.
The signal arrives encrypted, routine in format, devastating in meaning. Admiral Karl Dönitz reads it alone in his office, the Atlantic rain tapping against the windows of the bunker complex. He has already issued the withdrawal months earlier, but this message confirms what he feared even then. The balance will not return. Not this year. Not next. The new boats, the ones meant to restore surprise, are delayed. The snorkel works, but imperfectly. Radar detectors lag behind Allied improvements. Training pipelines are thin, crews younger, experience bleeding away with every loss. The technology race has been lost at sea. Dönitz sets the paper down slowly. He does not tear it. He does not curse. He simply stares at the map on the wall, at the Atlantic that once felt infinite and now feels claustrophobic. He thinks of the men inside the boats, not as numbers, as rooms, compartments, faces lit by red bulbs. He has walked those decks, smelled that air. He knows what it means to order men into a place where probability has replaced hope. For months, commanders have been sending variations of the same message, sometimes coded, sometimes painfully blunt. We were located within minutes. Enemy aircraft maintained contact through entire night. Battery exhaustion inevitable. No evasion possible. The language of inevitability. Dönitz knows that once soldiers begin to speak this way, a weapon is finished. At Lorient and Brest, U-boat pens sit half-empty now. Boats depart less frequently. When they do, it is without ceremony.
No banns. No speeches.
The men who remain behind watch silently, understanding what those departing are walking into. Some crews joke darkly as they leave. "See you next war," one sailor mutters. No one laughs. In Allied waters, the sea lanes hum with traffic. Liberty ships, tankers, troop transports, slow, ungainly vessels that once required constant protection, now move with relative freedom. Losses still occur, but they are exceptions rather than expectations. The fear has shifted. Now it belongs to the men below the surface. A British escort captain writes in his log after a rare contact. Asterisk submarine destroyed with little difficulty. Enemy tactics predictable. Asterisk it is not arrogance. It is observation. Predictability is death underwater. For the German crews still sailing, the psychological burden becomes unbearable. Every sound is suspect. Every shadow on the hydrophone might be the beginning of the end. Sleep comes in fragments.
Men flinch at rutine nausis.
Depth charges are imagined before they are heard. They know the math. They know how many boats have not returned. They know that if the enemy finds them, there will be no escape, only procedure. Dive. Silence. Endure. Fail. And still they go. Because orders are orders. Because duty remains when belief is gone. Because the ocean does not care why men enter it, only that they do. By the end of 1943, the realization that once spread quietly inside U-boats has hardened into doctrine on both sides. For the Allies, dominance beneath the waves is achieved. For the Germans, survival is no longer the goal. Delay is. December 1943. North Atlantic winter. The ocean is black and violent. Waves breaking like walls against the bow of you. 7:45 as it creeps westward at periscope depth. Ice forms along the casing. The air inside the boat is colder than it should be, damp in a way that seeps into bones. The crew moves carefully, conserving energy, conserving breath, conserving hope. Captain Lieutenant Rudolf Schaefer has stopped pretending this patrol is about victory. He studies the clock more than the charts now. Time has become the enemy. Every hour submerged drains batteries. Every hour surfaced risks detection. There is no favorable state anymore, only varying degrees of danger. The hydrophone operator lifts a hand. Aircraft engines, he whispers. Far. High. Schaefer closes his eyes. It is always aircraft now. The dive order comes automatically. Valves open. The boat sinks. Silent running follows. The men freeze in practiced stillness, muscles trembling from the effort of restraint. The engines pass overhead. They do not drop weapons. Yet, minutes stretch. Then more minutes.
No sonar pings. No explosions.
Just waiting. This is how the war feels now. Not like combat, but like anticipation of punishment. The men aboard U-745 understand something their predecessors never had to. Survival is no longer tied to action. There is nothing bold they can do to change their fate. There is only compliance with procedure and the hope that the enemy chooses another target. In May, they would have called this cowardice. In December, they call it realism. Across the Atlantic, the pattern repeats endlessly. Boats that remain undetected feel relief so intense it borders on disbelief. Boats that are detected rarely escape. When they do, they emerge damaged, hunted again within days. The sea has developed memory. In mess halls back in Germany, returning submariners speak in subdued tones. They describe escorts that do not give up. Aircraft that appear when they should not exist. Weapons that explode only when they hit, removing chance entirely. Younger sailors listen, unsettled. Some still believe they will be the exception. That skill or luck will save them. Veterans rarely argue. They simply nod and let time teach its own lesson. Schaefer writes in his personal notebook late one night, the red lamp barely illuminating the page. Asterisk, we are no longer at war with ships. We are at war with detection. Asterisk. He understands the implication immediately. Detection is not something you defeat. It is something that improves. The Atlantic has become a machine. Inputs go in, radio signals, surfaced hulls, wakes, sound. Outputs come out, coordinates, intercepts, destruction. Human bravery exists inside that machine, but it does not control it. The crews who survive longest are not the boldest. They are the quietest, the luckiest, the least noticed. That is not how wars are meant to be fought. By the end of 1943, U-boat commanders no longer talk about glory or sacrifice. They talk about endurance, about bringing their men home, about avoiding detection long enough to receive the next withdrawal order. And when they do sink ships, rare, costly victories, they feel little satisfaction. Every torpedo fired is a radio transmission risked. Every explosion draws attention. Success accelerates death. This is the final cruelty of the U-boat war. The very act that once defined purpose now increases the odds of annihilation. The men who realized this first were not historians or admirals. They were the ones listening to sonar pings echo through steel, counting battery percentages, feeling the hull bend inward, and understanding, without drama, without illusion, that the war had already passed them by.